This is a verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial. As reported by inner-city press, nobody expected in the room was tense eyes focused on the next witness until the back doors opened and in walked Will Smith. Gasps echoed. Even the judge froze. No announcement, no pre-written statement. Just was stepping forward on his own. Until that moment, he had stayed silent as his name swirled through headlines, court leaks, and whispered audio recordings said to be too disturbing to release, but something had changed. Maybe it was the rumors, maybe it was a betrayal from people he once trusted, maybe it was hearing that tape played behind closed doors. Whatever was what was done hiding. He wasn't on the stand as a celebrity. He was there as a man who'd seen too much and said too little, and when he began to speak to Courtroom, wasn't prepared for what they would hear. Because what were revealed about Diddy, the parties, the manipulation, and the fear wasn't just explosive, it was a warning. It started like any other day of the Diddy trial. The room buzzed with low conversations, the press hunched in their designated rows, and lawyers whispered strategies as they waited for the next scheduled witness. But when the side doors opened and Will Smith stepped into Courtroom alone, no entourage, no legal team, no announcement, the room changed. You could hear a pin drop. Some people thought it was a mistake. Others thought it was a stunt, but the way Will walked slow focus with that old Fresh Prince stoicism melted away into something more raw, told everyone this was real. The judge raised an eyebrow, and Diddy, who'd been smugly lounging at the defense table, suddenly looked tense. Will walked straight to the witness stand, no eye contact with anyone. He didn't even glance at Did. Yeah, I wasn't asked to come here today. Will began. I asked if I could speak. The judge allowed it, and from that moment on, the entire trial shifted because what Will Smith was about to say wasn't part of any media narrative. It wasn't a social media leak. It was something that had haunted him for years, something that began at a party no one was supposed to talk about. I've kept a lot inside for a long time. He said, I've laughed on red carpets. I've won awards. I've made movies about honor and strength. But none of that can hide what I saw, what I experienced. And who made it happen? He turned just slightly toward Diddy. You did. Will Smith told Courtroom that it started like many Hollywood stories. Due with an invitation. It came through a mutual contact, someone I'd worked with before. The way they framed it, it was supposed to be a celebration, Diddy's birthday. Nothing wild, just music networking. A place where stars could unwind. I'd been things like that before, so I didn't question it. But the moment Will arrived, he knew something was off. It was at this massive mansion in the hills, black SUVs at the front security. Everywhere the second I stepped inside, my phone was taken. That should have been the first red flag. They said it was for privacy, to protect the guests, but it felt like something else, like they didn't want anything getting out. He was ushered inside. The lights were dim. The music low and strange, ambient rhythmic, almost hypnotic. There were no cameras you could see, but there were mirrors everywhere. It felt like someone was always watching. Will said that after a few drinks and some casual conversation, Diddy approached him directly. He said something like, now you're part of the family. And he smiled. That smile, it wasn't warmth, it was ownership, Will said. He followed Diddy into a back room thinking they were going to talk business. Instead, what he saw shook him to the core. There were people performing, men, women, some I recognized from film and music. Some looked young, too young. There were others watching like it was entertainment. And Diddy, he was laughing like it was the most normal thing in the world. He paused, swallowing hard. I didn't know how to leave, and that was the point. Once you're in, Will continued, his voice steady but hollow. A few days after the party, I got a call, block number. All the voice said was, hope you had fun, Fresh Prince. Then they hung up. He thought it was just a weird prank until an envelope arrived at his office. It was unmarked inside, with a flash drive. I almost didn't look, but I did. It was footage from that night of me sitting on a couch, clearly out. I don't remember being that out of it. But there I was laughing at something I couldn't even remember. There was a voice behind a camera, Diddy's voice, saying, that's how we keep him. Will testified that the fear he felt in that moment was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. I realized I wasn't invited to that party. I was initiated. He said that's when the manipulation began. I get invites to more parties. I declined, and suddenly movie roles. I was in talks for gone people I worked with for years, stopped calling rumors, started online. That I was gay, that I was unstable, that I was cheating. I knew what it was. It was pressure. Diddy didn't need to say it. He just made it clear. That silence was a cost of peace, and so for years Will said nothing. He smiled through interviews, brushed off rumors, focused on work. But every time I saw a news story about someone else speaking out, Cassie Dawn Richard, even Meek Mill's name being dragged into this, I thought if they're speaking, why am I still quiet? He looked around the courtroom. Diddy didn't just ruin people's careers, he made them fear telling the truth, and that, Will said, was what finally brought him to court. Will pause, glanced at the jury, and leaned closer to the mic. It wasn't just a video, that was a leash, he said. From that moment on, everything he'd have felt like it had strings attached to it. He explained that calls would come through his agent, invitations to events, meeting projects. When he said no things would ship behind the scenes, I'd say no to a Diddy event. And the next week I'd find out a green-lit project suddenly wasn't green-lit anymore. He said this didn't happen once or twice, it became a pattern. Diddy didn't have to threaten people. He had systems that did it for him, PR, people, bloggers, producers. He knew who to call. He knew how to make problems appear out of thin air and how to make opportunities vanish just as fast. Will testified about one specific instance in 2013 when he had been lined up for a major international campaign with a top luxury brand. We were in final negotiation. I'd already shot the first lookbook. Then out of nowhere they dropped me. I never got a reason. But 2 weeks later, I was invited to another Diddy event. When I declined again, the phone call started. Rumored gossip blogs posting stories about me that were oddly specific stuff only someone with access could have planted. He said it was psychological warfare. You start to feel like you're crazy, like you're paranoid. But then you see it, the patterns of punishments. You realize you're not imagining it, you're being boxed. And will told the court he knew other celebrities going through similar things. Some of them are sitting silent. Right now, some of them have contracts that won't let them speak. Some of them are scared they'll be exposed the same way then. He turned toward Diddy and said, plainly, you didn't just collect people, you controlled them. And everyone knew exactly what he meant. Well, didn't stop at the manipulation. He explained how Diddy's grip wasn't just over artists, it stretched into Hollywood's entire foundation. You couldn't walk onto a major stage without brushing shoulders with someone he helped put there. Will said he once attended a charity gala in 2016 where behind the scenes high-powered figures from music, film, politics, and tech were all thanking Puff as if he was the glue holding the whole thing together. I watched one executive from a streaming platform hand him a USB drive and whisper, only you have the final cut. Well, didn't say what was on the drive, but he said confirmed what he'd feared. Diddy wasn't just networking, he was gatekeeping. He described moments where he saw other actors, rappers, and public figures behave oddly submissive around Diddy, like they were trying to stay in his good graces, laughing too hard, deferring to him. In every conversation, I realized a lot of people weren't his friends, they were his survivors. Will testify that one reason he stayed silent so long was because he thought speaking out would blackball him permanently. But then I realized I'd already been blackballed. Quietly, no official blacklist, just whispers, doubt, and doors closing. He said the only reason he stayed relevant at all was because his audience, the public, wouldn't let him disappear. That's the part Puff didn't control, the people. He explained how over time he began to see things differently. He started revisiting old footage, photos from events, after parties, press junkets, realizing how often Diddy's influence loomed behind the scenes. He was always there, if not in person, then in power. And then, Will said, came the moment that changed everything. Will's voice dropped to a quieter, deeper tone. I stayed quiet for 20 years. I convinced myself it wasn't happening or that it wasn't happening to me. But then the audio started to surface. He said the first time he heard about secret audio tapes being played in court, he didn't believe it. Then I got a call, not from prosecution, not from a journalist, from someone I used to trust. They said, well, you're on one of those tapes. They played it yesterday. People are talking. He described feeling like the floor had dropped from under him. I didn't even know a tape like that existed. But once I accepted it might be real, everything else started to connect. Will said he stayed up all night, replaying memories, the party, the blackout, the envelope, the block numbers. It was all system, and I was one of the victims. He said the breaking point wasn't fear, it was humiliation. I realized that if I didn't speak now, my silence would become my legacy, and I couldn't live with that. My kids are going to see these headlines. My grandkids might see them. I had to speak. He told the court. He called the prosecution team himself. I told them, I'm ready. Whatever you need, whatever questions you have, I'll answer them. He looked at the jury. I wasn't just coerced. I was played. I was filmed. And I was used then. He looked at Diddy again, this time with sharper tone. And you knew exactly what you were doing. Closed his eyes for a moment before speaking again, as if preparing to relive something he had fought to forget. When the prosecution asked if I wanted to hear the audio, I hesitated. He said, but I knew I had to. They played it behind closed doors. No press, no jury, just the judge, the lawyers, and Will. I heard myself laughing. Will said slowly. It was hollow. It wasn't real. I sounded drunk, no drugged. He described the background of the audio, slow music, low voices, the occasional cheer or shout. Then I heard Diddy clear his day saying something like, that's how we break them in. And then I heard my name. They were saying my name while doing things I don't even want to repeat. He said it wasn't just humiliating, it was horrifying. There's a difference between being embarrassed and being stripped of your humanity. That tape, it took something from me. Will's voice cracked for the first time. He looked down, collecting himself, and continued. I never consented to being recorded. I never agreed to be a part of that. But Diddy recorded it. He kept it, maybe to use, maybe just to have. He explained how for years he couldn't figure out why he would feel sudden anxiety when certain names were mentioned, why he had panic attacks during simple interviews. Now I know it's because I wasn't crazy. I was remembering something I didn't want to remember. Will said that hearing the audio forced him to confront everything, the manipulation, the grooming, the betrayal from people who stood by and watched. And he said what shook him most wasn't what he heard, it was what I didn't remember. He looked at the jury and said, if you want to know how powerful Diddy is, ask yourself how someone like me could be silenced for 20 years and not even realize it. By the time Will's testimony hit the media, it was too late for Hollywood to do damage. Control. The clips from court were viral before the BAFE could even call reset. Hashtags exploded. Our Will Speaks Our Freak Off, tape our Diddy file. And for the first time the public saw Will not as a polished A-lister, but as a survivor. Will said, I knew once I spoke things would get ugly, but I didn't know how fast. He recounted how within 24 hours of testifying, he lost 2 pending brand endorsements. Another studio halted promotion for a film he had already shot. But he said it didn't matter, because I'd already lost something more valuable years ago, my voice. He said the calls started rolling in quiet ones, texts from actors, producers, even directors, some of them thanking him, others warning him. One said, you don't know who you just declared war on. Another said, you've made yourself radioactive. We'll mention a few names without full details, citing legal reasons, but nodded when the prosecution asked about people like Kevin Hart, Meek Mill, and Lucien Grange. This isn't just a Diddy problem, it's an industry built on silence, and everyone's been trading in that currency. He also said he believed others had dirt on him. I know after this more footage might come out, they'll try to paint me as unstable, as broken. Let them. I'm not here to protect myself anymore. I'm here to protect the truth. He told the court he expected backlash, expected denials, and expected Diddy's legal team to claim he was making it all up. They'll say, I'm bitter. They'll say I'm covering something. But I ask you this, if I was lying, why did I wait this long? Why now, when I have more to lose? And ever he ended that part of the testimony with a line that silenced the room. Sometimes the truth comes late, but still it's like thunder for his final statement. The judge allowed Will to speak directly to Diddy. He stood from the witness chair, walked a few feet closer, and looked him in the eye. You built an empire out of manipulation, he began. You called it success, you called it culture, you called it love, but all you built was fear. Diddy didn't respond. He sat there motionless, his lawyer whispering in his ear. Will didn't blink. I saw what you did to those girls. I saw what you did to me. I heard the things you said about me. When you thought I wasn't listening, you broke people for sport. Then Will pulled something from his pocket, an old photo. This was me in 2004, right before the first party. That's the man I used to be. He held up to the court. I haven't seen him in years. Will turn to the jury. If you think this is just about Cassie or me or one night in some mansion, you're not seeing the whole picture. This is about a network of power designed to silence truth. And if we don't tear it down, it will keep going. Then he faced Diddy one. Last time you once said, nobody parties like Diddy. Well, nobody lies like you either. He walked back to the stand, picked up his things, and exited the courtroom without looking back. And Diddy sat there pale, unblinking, his fingers shaking, because for the first time in decades, he wasn't the one controlling the room. When Will Smith stepped down from the witness stand, he did look like a man who had won anything. He looked like someone who had finally stopped running. The courtroom was still tense, almost unsure how to breathe again. Even the judge looked shaken. Some of the jurors had tears in their eyes. And Diddy, for the first time in the entire trial, looked like he had nothing left to say. Will didn't speak to the press when he exited. He didn't wave, didn't posture. He walked out the front of the courthouse with his head held high, but his shoulders carried the weight of 20 years of trauma. When asked later by reporters if he felt relieved, he reportedly responded, relief isn't the right word, it's just finished. But outside the courtroom, the world was only beginning to react. Hollywood went into a quiet panic. Executives, Ken-led meetings, agencies paused deals, directors, and producers who had once celebrated Will Smith suddenly found their phones ringing with questions. The same people who once said his family were now issuing boilerplate statements of deep concern and commitment to truth behind closed doors. Crisis teams were activated. PR firms sent internal memos urging clients to distance publicly from any past associations with Mr. Combs. And while many tried to pretend they were shocked, the internet was already doing what it does best, resurfacing the receipts, old clips of Diddy brushing shoulders with top-tier names parties, where everyone looked too uncomfortable to be just partying interviews, where guests dance around uncomfortable questions, footage of years ago being interviewed and visibly recoiling when Diddy's name came up, and most painfully dozens of clips from A Fresh Prince. Era where fans now say it would look like he was smiling through something. Fans weren't just shocked, they were furious that someone like Will had to carry this alone, furious that for years the whispers were called conspiracy, and furious that the system had stayed quiet for so long. But Will didn't stay in hiding the day after his testimony. He posted a single message online, a black and white photo of himself as a young actor, 1993, standing on a film set, smiling into the sun. The caption read, "He didn't know what was coming, but he made it through. I'm proud of him. No hashtags, no name drops. Just that the response was instant, millions of shares, tens of thousands of comments, celebrities, activists, and everyday people thanking him for his courage more than anything survivors of abuse men especially flooded the post with their own confession. You gave us a voice," one wrote. "If we can speak, so can we." Meanwhile, back inside the court, Diddy's team scrambled. Rumors swirled that more subpoenas were going out not just to musicians and assistants, but to executives at labels, distribution companies, even media conglomerates. What Will's testimony had done wasn't just personal. It had cracked the dam, and now the flood was coming. Whispers said more tapes existed, not just audio, but visual footage, some of them featuring other public figures. The court sealed these for now, but according to insiders, if any of them leak, it would flip the industry upside down. And Will didn't return to work right away. He declined interviews. He can let appearances, but he wasn't hiding. Insiders say he's been spending time with his kids, focused on rebuilding what matters, one friend told Variety anonymously. He's healing now for first time in years. He's not pretending. Before court adjourned that day, the judge made a statement that caught even the media off guard. What we heard today was not just testimony. It was a reckoning. And this court acknowledges the courage it took to deliver it. The final shot of the day wasn't Diddy. It wasn't even Will. It was the jury sitting motionless, processing everything they just heard. And in that silence, one thing was clear: the era of silence was